Hello, I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts. I hope you are well today. Had a little mix-up on my end on the scheduling, so we'll be talking with Tanya Ticey next week about how emotions affect our pets. So what I'm going to talk with you about today is fleas, because that's just so much fun. Um, and there's a couple of things I want to put out there in specific. Pesticides, golly, those are not nice things. So what do we do about all of that? And what do we do to protect our pets and things like that? So first of all, I want to tell you about the bad old days. So when I finished veterinary practice or started veterinary practice, finished veterinary school in 1990, I thought the fleas were bad in Raleigh, North Carolina. So we had to use flea. At that point, this was way before Advantage and all of that, fipronil, top spot, all of that stuff came out. And so it was crazy. We had to dip the dogs and cats. We had to put flea collars on them, use flea sprays, and all of this stuff. So it just was an enormous process if you lived in the Southeast. So I thought it was bad in Raleigh, North Carolina. And when I got down to Charleston, South Carolina, I was flabbergasted. So I moved to Folly Beach, and holy smokes, it was it was awful. So, I'm on the beach in the sand. The fleas loved it. We were literally, flea control was me handing my clients literally a grocery bag full of stuff, so that they could get things under control. And it was dreadful. I had to bomb the house every 2 weeks to keep them under control. I was dipping the dogs, I was spraying them, the cats too. They had a bath and a flea dip every week. Much to my amazement, they actually put up with it. So that was pretty horrible, and I'd had organophosphate toxicity when I was working in a vet clinic and working cattle. And for those of you that don't know, organophosphates are pesticides as well, and they are a whole lot nastier. Now, am I telling you because that makes today's stuff all perfectly healthy and peachy? No, it does not. But the volume of chemicals we have to use is far, far less than it used to be. And sadly, if you have used things like fipronil, which is frontline, or the Advantage topical stuff, you have eaten far more of it than you have ever put on your pets, which is also horrifying. The sales guys used to tell us this because I don't know if they thought it would make us feel better or what. But at any rate, I want to go over a couple of things that helped me actually get some relief for my pets back in the bad old days, and really started to change my thinking about, okay, what do we need to do? So first I want to show you a couple of things about the flea life cycle. So we got two pictures up here, and this first disc or life cycle is truly that. So there's 4 stages to the flea life cycle: the flea eggs, the flea larvae, the flea pupae, which basically not much short of an atomic bomb can destroy, and then the adult fleas. So the important thing to realize is this adult flea part is what you see on your pet, and it is truly less than 5% of the whole flea population. The other 95% live in your home or in your yard, in the environment. So, like as I said, there's nothing short of an atomic bomb that makes these guys just die. So, and this is also the reason when many people in the Southeast go on vacation, they've had their dogs and cats at a boarding kennel or somewhere else, they get home and all of a sudden, boom, 20 minutes later, these guys bust out, and it is just all of a sudden you're crawling with fleas, literally. So as it says over here in this little part, they hatch into fleas when they sense warmth and vibration and carbon dioxide. So what I want to get across to you is this is what bothers us, this 5%. This is what drives our pets insane, drives us insane, but it's really much more effective and much less toxic to approach getting rid of fleas down here at the bottom of the pyramid. So when I say let's treat the bottom of the pyramid, this is what I mean. So these guys, the eggs and larvae, are susceptible to several different things, and one of them is insect growth regulators, which are chemicals, but they prevent them from either turning from eggs into larvae or from larvae into pupae. So much less toxic to mammals, to us, to our pets. And the other place, one of the other things that's really useful in the home, especially if you have wall-to-wall carpeting, are things like silicate crystals, borax, things of that nature. And fleabusters.com, and I'll put that in the comments here, has been around for a very long time. And indeed, this is what brought relief to me and my pets when I was first practicing in South Carolina. So they produce a couple of products. One is a borax silicate crystal mixture that you can put in the house, put in the vacuum cleaner if you don't have wall-to-wall carpeting. And literally what happens is it slices the eggs and the larvae open so that they cannot hatch into the next life cycle. And the other thing they make is something called nematodes, which are little organisms that eat these guys. They eat the eggs and larvae. And so you can put them in your yard in the shady part, and they will eat the eggs and larvae. Lots of people will also do things like put borax on the outside of their homes so that the fleas are less likely to come in. But I mean, these guys are really pretty onerous. So I had clients that lived in the 8th story of a condo building that had fleas, and her apartment did not have pets, but everybody around her did, and so they crawled up into the wallboard and into her apartment. So she had to come to the vet to get stuff to kill the fleas. So not too much fun. Now, if you don't have if you're in an area where it's dry and it's all good, like I'm in the Baja right now, as I said, for Mona and Pepe, we haven't had to use any flea medications for almost the entire time since we left South Carolina, since June of 18. So this is where, again, you've got to understand, what are these guys like? They like damp, humid, warm conditions. Now, in the deep south, in the dark part of summer when it's over 90 degrees and the sun is shining, these guys actually can't hatch out. So we see fleas lessen during that period of time and then come back out in the fall and then again in the spring. We will sometimes see fleas as early as January if it's been a relatively warm winter. So this is where you've got to really think out, okay, when do I need the flea stuff? Because most conventional veterinarians will say, oh, you need to put this stuff on year round, and you really do not. So you've got to know your flea season for your environment and figure that out. And then also, what can you use that is not toxic? So there's all kinds of stuff out there. There are shoe tags, which work on electromagnetic wavelengths in the flea and the tick for that matter. They've been really helpful. For pets that do have seizures, you do need to use them with caution because sometimes they will, because they're working on electromagnetic frequency, we've seen some pets actually have more frequent seizures. So not a great option for pets with seizures, especially if they are not well controlled. Now, there's all sorts of other stuff you can use, like Wondercide Sprayed is made with essential cedar oil, which has been worked fabulously for many people. So if you're in an area where fleas are sometimes a problem but not a big deal, this is where natural treatments really, really help. And so you would use things like Wondercide, essential oil combinations, so things like peppermint, lavender, some of the citrus things like lemon or orange. With cats, you do need to be careful with catnip because topically it can be toxic for them. Now, the other thing is for these sort of essential oil-based products, you do need to apply them much more frequently, and that may be every 12 to 24 hours, depending on how many fleas and ticks you're dealing with. So be cognizant of that. If you live in the deep south and fleas are a massive problem, or if your pet is sensitive or allergic to fleas, this is where using something like a Seresto collar, if that's possible, would be great. And what that is, to me, this is the best option. If you don't have dogs that play with each other and chew their collars off, because obviously you don't want one dog eating the other dog's flea collar. But if that is not an issue for both dogs and cats, I feel like it delivers the least amount of chemical, and it helps to kill things before they really get started. For my clients that would go back up to the Northeast in the summer, that was a marvelous thing for them. They really had great control of ticks in that area. They would come back from a hike and never saw ticks attached to the dog. They'd see dead ticks lying in the dog's bed, which is gross, but much better than a bunch of ticks attached to the dog. Now for fleas, I saw the same thing. And the reason I like Seresto collars more than anything else is that it works by diffusion. So the collar has to be up next to the neck. It works on body heat, and it also works on figuring out, okay, how much is, and not that the collar is smart, diffusion is just a mechanism. So what happens is if there's less of the chemical outside on the dog's body or the cat's body, more comes out of the collar. And then all of that stuff moves through the dog's body and the cat's body and gets down to the tip of the tail. So we saw really excellent flea control. There are some pets that will be sensitive to having the collar on themselves, so you do have to watch for irritation around the neck. Now, the other stuff that's available, the topicals, Advantage, Frontline, things of that nature, you do have to sometimes use them every couple of weeks in order to keep things under control. And this is where combining the essential oils, Wondercide, things of that nature, along with these other products is a fantastic idea, simply because it's going to help reduce the load of stuff, of parasites that your pet picks up. Now, there's all these oral pills out there. There's NexGard, Bravecto, Trifexis, all this stuff. And here's what I want you to think about in terms of these things. Your pet is eating them. They are designed to stay in the body for a minimum of 30 days, and in Bravecto's case, 90 days. I think there's another one that does almost 4 months, 120 days. It still has to get to the skin to work. Okay, so that means your pet has to eat it, it has to get stored in the fat and in the liver, and then work its way to the skin in order to be effective in killing fleas. Does that sound like a good idea to you? It never did to me either. And there are some people that got wigged out about having pesticides on their dog and cat skin, and they didn't want their kids to be exposed to it, and I get that. But they still are going to be, because it still has to get on the skin to be effective. And what is your 2-year-old going to do? It's going to chew on your dog's ears. Now, granted, it's also going to chew on a flea collar, so you do have to be cautious. And so that's where a topical may be a better option. You put that on at night when your child has gone to bed, if you're going to go that route, and let that sort of distribute. And then if it's got a big clump of grossness, just kind of, work that out. Don't put it all in one big clump behind the shoulder blades. Stripe it up the back so that that product gets a little bit more evenly distributed. Now, why am I telling you to use pesticides? Because if you are in the deep south, you know. If you do really good environmental control, so if we go back to this idea of taking care of the fleas in the environment so that we're knocking these guys out, then we have far fewer of these guys. But if you're in the middle of a flea explosion, you can't wait the 6 weeks. It's going to take, knock these guys off and then let these guys hatch out. So that's why I'm telling you about pesticides. Is that the primary method you should use to keep fleas under the control? Absolutely not. So what do you do if you've had to use pesticides, or it's something that you're having to use on a regular basis to keep things under control? Up in the Northeast, you got to control the ticks because otherwise your dog gets Lyme disease. Not as much for cats, but that means they're bringing ticks in and they can get on you and your dog as well. So there's a couple of things, and detox is all the rage. And there's a couple of things I want you to understand about detoxing. The way it is presented in humans is to, do this big, giant protocol. Here's what I want you to understand. You need to do this on an everyday basis. And, here's what I always say. If you're not cooking, start. Because this is going to provide your gut bacteria or your pet's gut bacteria with all the things it needs to thrive as far as fibers and things of that nature. Fiber helps to flush toxins out of the system, and you're off to the races. So this is one of the number one things you can do to really help your pet stay healthy. Start cooking, detox gently every day. Same thing for us. If you're eating Doritos all the time and you're not eating a lot of vegetables and drinking plenty of clear water, that's the first place to start. The other thing to remember is that if your pet is already sick and is really struggling with disease, starting a detox is not a good plan because your pet's system is already overwhelmed. So again, start simple. Start with cooking. And then the other thing you want to do is to make sure that your pet's water and your water is clear. So if you're drinking water that is loaded with arsenic and other chemicals that just are not very nice, heavy metals, PCBs, plastic, all of that junk, you're way behind the 8 ball. So get some sort of a filter. Whether you're using as simple as a pitcher filter, which is going to take out not very much chlorine and a few things, or something reverse osmosis, which unfortunately puts the toxic stuff back in the environment. We've been traveling with this Berkey filter for almost 2 years now, and so far in Mexico we've put it to the test as far as does it work well for bugs. Here to say yes, it does. We've not had any major GI issues. So that's really the first place to start. What you're drinking, what you're eating are the 2 everyday detoxes you need to do. The third one is move. If you're moving stuff through your lymphatic system, and that helps to get rid of all of the evil spirits that get stuck in tissues. So that's really the way to go. Now, another way to detox is to work on supporting your liver. And so we can do this in a really big way, or we can do it really simply. One of the things I suggest doing is using milk thistle once a month for 1 week. And we typically suggest timing this with heartworm preventive. If your pet's really been absorbed to a bunch of junk, had to go through chemotherapy, you had to use the pesticides for 3 to 6 months, then this is a good way to go. So that, I've got this all written out for you, but liposomal glutathione is the master detoxifying agent of the liver. Pardon me. And then milk thistle is another mechanism. Charcoal simply adsorbs junk. So you're going to use these 2 things to push garbage out of your pet's liver, and you're going to use this thing to absorb it in the gut. You want to give them apart by 2 hours so that the charcoal doesn't absorb the things that are going to push things through. So I hope that's helpful. The other thing that's useful as far as a catcher is a bentonite clay, and vitamin C is another thing that helps to protect tissue. So probiotics are another big component, and then Free and Easy Wanderer helps your pet's liver get stuff sorted out. So this protocol I'm going to have in our comments here, and it's in the YouTube channel description, but it just is, don't do a big detox, especially if your pet's sick. And then if you have had to use some things to get like pesticides, or your pet's been really sick and you had to use the Western meds to get things under control, this is a great option. So that's what I've got for you this week. We have 5% off still going on with our allergy support protocol until the end of today. And then starting the 13th to the 17th to help celebrate Valentine's Day, love your pet and give it food that will help keep its body happy. So we've got 25% off the original Crock Pet diet, as well as the other home DIY programs for kidney support and gut health. I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts, your pet's ally. Thanks for joining me today. Until next week, remember, your pet's best health starts in the bowl. Take good care.